So now I want to bring all this together using a case study, which is the Doncaster Hill case study. Now, Doncaster Hill is a suburb in Yarra Valley Waters area, and the council responsible, the Manningham City Council here in Melbourne, decided that they wanted to redevelop the area, and the plan was to construct about a dozen multi-storey apartment buildings. And what the council had decided to do was to put a sustainability overlay on top of this development. And they came to Yarra Valley Water and said, well, what part could water play in supporting, say, a 6-star sustainability standard? So we looked at this whole new development, and when we crunched the numbers, what we found was that we could service this new development by using the existing centralised systems. You know, the major reservoirs, the transfer systems, the existing reticulation. We could just tap in to the existing networks at virtually no cost and service this development from the existing systems. So what that ended up producing was, for Yarra Valley Water, in net present value terms, it meant that this was worth $30 million to Yarra Valley Water. So what that meant, in other terms, is that it cost us virtually nothing to service this new development, but the revenues that we'd gained from nearly 4,000 apartments would end up producing this $30 million value for Yarra Valley Water, the utility. However, the council had asked us to look at alternatives, so we did look at using rainwater tanks. The idea was that each apartment building would collect its own water. Any rain that fell on the property would collect that in tanks and then recycle it back into the building. The second option was what's referred to on the slide as recycled black water or third pipe. Now what that really means is that we were going to take water from a nearby major sewer. We were then going to treat that water to what is called a Class A standard here in Australia, and then we would recycle that water back into each of these apartment buildings in the same way as we were planning to recycle the stormwater. And this recycled water, both the stormwater and the black water recycling, would be used to flush the toilets, to wash clothes, to wash cars and water the gardens, of course. So when we crunched the numbers on that, we found that each of those other options were going to cost Yarra Valley more. So the net present value reduced to Yarra Valley Water from about 30 million down to about 25. So Yarra Valley Water was giving up $5 million worth of value to support these alternatives. So if you look at that purely from a selfish utility point of view, you would not proceed. And that, of course, is most utilities' experience of these type of options. So we started to add in some of the estimates of the externalities. And we looked at nutrients. Now, under the existing systems, the existing centralised systems, the sewage flows by gravity. It ends up down at a sewage treatment plant somewhere in the system. And of course, that is then discharging nutrients back into the environment. So by recycling the nutrients out of the sewage system back into this development, we were avoiding that environmental impact. And using some of the values I referred to earlier in the presentation, we came up with these values for the nutrient discharges. On top of that, we then looked at greenhouse gas abatement, and as it happened, there wasn't a great deal of difference between any of the options. So that wasn't, in this particular case, that wasn't a major influence. Then of course we looked at extracting water from rivers, taking more water from the environment, or the alternative to that was augmenting future supplies to provide the amount of water that we needed to service this development, or the value of deferring that investment by not using that water for this development. And that became actually very material in the whole equation. And you can see from the slide that you've got these externalities. So the simple thing to do then is to extract the value of those externalities from the numbers I talked about before, the $30 million and the 25. and all of a sudden the value flips. And what we found was that it was actually a better answer for the community if we adopted the third pipe or the recycled black water. And that case became even stronger if there was a high growth scenario in this development. The numbers you see initially on the screen are for a low growth scenario, but if the developers were so successful they sold more apartments and met their upper target, then the benefits became even more pronounced for the alternative supplies. And they were a factor of 3 more valuable to the community than the traditional option that suited the utility. So again, the question becomes, who should pay that additional value? How is the utility compensated for adopting the alternative? And one of the reasons why Yarra Valley Water adopted this particular case study and crunched all the numbers is because we wanted to highlight the very fact that somebody does need to pay. And whether it was Yarra Valley Water's customers that would end up paying or not, or some other authority or the government themselves, at least what we were trying to do is to raise the debate about those issues and come to some conclusion about who the beneficiaries were and who should pay. The takeaway messages are: be very clear on the problem you're trying to solve and don't come with any preconceived solutions. Keep an open mind for as long as possible about the possible solutions and keep your boundary conditions wide. Get agreement on the value of the externalities from all the key stakeholders, and particularly those that may end up wearing the cost of the externalities. And be as transparent as possible about your decision making so you do have an audit path and you can convince the powers that be about the validity of your analysis. And at the end of the day, take responsibility. Have a go at some of these things. I think it's been very instructive for Yarra Valley Water to experiment with these sort of case studies. And several of them are in place now. We've actually implemented projects. It's been a massive learning exercise for the organisation, and it's helped the whole industry look at things from a different perspective. And at the end of the day, what we all want, of course, is a better answer and a better solution for our community.